Hello friends, today we are going to talk about one of the fundamentals concept in Angular, and not just Angular, it is present in all other frameworks. Like you can see it in the Spring framework of Java or any other frameworks for that matter, be it a Ruby on Rails or any other like PHP's framework, uh, anything. It be dependency injection is the design pattern which is used in multiple frameworks, typically in a web frameworks, or it can be in any programming language. So in general, dependency injection, irrespective of framework, it is a design pattern in which a class receives the instances of object it needs called dependencies from an external source rather than it creating them itself. So wherever any class or any program which needs particular dependencies in order to fulfill its instructions, its execution, it has dependencies on other classes. And if it has such a scenario, it doesn't create them on its own. So what it does, it asks some, it asks to a utility, and the responsibility of that utility is to create the instance of class and provide. That's a fundamental concept behind dependency injection, and same is used in Angular. So in Angular, whenever a UI components, whenever it has a dependency of anything that it needs, it is not initialized, the opposite of that dependency is not initialized into a component itself, rather than it there is one utility. That utility, in the language of Angular, we call it injector. So it make a request to injector to provide a instance of that dependency so that component can use it. So you can see in this example there's a component, and this component has a dependency on this service, namely hero service. And instead of creating or initializing that hero service instance completely new in the memory, what this component did, it requested an injector to create a new instance of that hero service, and that instance is directly injected into a component, and so that now that hero service instance is available to use. They are particularly dedicated for having an processing, having a common set of instruction which are applicable to multiple components, or it holds a responsibility where it has to cater some common functionality, some common code, or some common logic that is being reused across multiple components. So as you can see in this example, there is a service class. This is an example in a plain JavaScript where you can see service is a one class which is exported in a component, and in a component there is a new instance of service is created. Now this was a conventional approach. If you have a dependency on any service, you will import it and will create an instance of it, and that is a problematic actually in a framework like Angular where you have too many components. And uh, Angular basically promotes you to have many small decomposable units through which you can create an application from small components. Imagine how much code you are repeating there, and this will in turn cause a bottleneck where you will have same code repeated, which violates your do not repeat yourself design pattern. But also in terms of maintainability, you will have a code that is not good readable. And the worst part of it is creating these new instances every time it causes an impact on memory. So whenever a new object is created in JavaScript, it occupies some memory in the browser, it occupies some memory in your system. That means if you are going to occupy too much memory, it is going to cause an blunder on overall performance of your web application. To overcome with this problem, this is the solution what through dependency injection design pattern is implemented in Angular. So through Angular we have a concept called injector, and through that injector services can be injected into a multiple components. And in order to make those services injectable, it's very simple. There is one decorator, namely at that injectable, that has to be imported from Angular core, and we just have to make a class at the rate injectable. And for that, if we just put at that injectable on top of class, Angular knows that it is injectable and only one instance of it has to create, and that can be later be injected into a components wherever it is required. So you can see that here in the blue box, this component needed that service instance, but now, like the old approach, it did not create a new instance of that service itself. Rather, it just has in the constructor mentioned that there will be a my service type of variable, and that will be of type service. That's it. It doesn't create a new instance. I want to show this through an real example. As you can see, there is a service, logger service, and through at that injectable, which is you can see from it is a metadata. It represents a metadata which tells that this service is injectable. And now, since I made this class which is logger injectable, it can be used in any component. Wherever that service has to use, we just have to import that. So logger I imported from logger service, and in the constructor I created a logger variable which is of the type of logger service, and now I'm ready to use that logger. So logging is a very typical example where we want to have a logging across the application. We want to events happening in the application, like some exception, some error occurred to some logging database. So that we can do through a dependency injection. Logger is allowing me to log the data, and this logging functionality, this logging logic is shared across multiple components. So this is what I was talking about at the start of this video, that if you have particular logic that is common across all application, you put that in the services, and the Angular dependency injection is always achieved through services. Remember this. So now with the help of logger, I can invoke all the methods that are present in the services, and I can use it. So having a dependency injection doesn't help you in just holding a common logic or the functionality that is shared across the components, but it also help you to pass a data between the components, have a real-time synchronization between the components. So there are libraries like NGRX which are built on the dependency injection concept, and they leverage the dependency injects to have some complex mechanism of state management, which is very popular in the Angular applications. One more thing you have to do in order to enable the injectable service is in your app module, where your components are declared, you have to provide your service into that. So in the providers array, you need to make an entry for your service so that your import into a respective components will happen successfully. If you don't provide this entry into a providers array for that service, and you are trying to use that in your respective components, when you're trying to import it, it won't be able to recognize, because that service is not provided by the module under which these components are declared. So it basically need to have an entry into a providers. That's all for this concept of dependency injection, and I hope this video may help you.